Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Thursday session of Zero to One, where we focus on India in particular, but also just all the exciting things happening in the South Asia region and how it also has an impact on the Southeast Asia region, where we're based in Singapore. We're really excited. This is our third session now on the specific topic, and we've got plenty more in the pipeline as well. So we're really excited to bring that to you as well. It's a really exciting market and a lot of opportunities there as well. And this particular topic is certainly front of mind because we know actually recently we did a survey of some of our members based in India, for example, and overwhelmingly the majority of them were working in the creative industry in some shape or form. Of course, there are so many different types of creatives that can be out there in that sense, but it was creative and technology what really kind of jumped out in that sense. And so we know that those they may be in higher education and they're sort of about to start their journey and they want to do something different, or maybe they're already on that path and they're interested to see how they can develop their skill set and build from that as well. Be it a solopreneur, be it somebody who wants to grow a business and get investment and hire staff and take on the world and everything as well. Whichever you want to do, that's okay. And we're really excited this week to have Anjchita with us, who is going to share some of her journey working in this industry and also just how you can apply that running a business as well. So thank you for joining us. And if you'd like to maybe just take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself before we kick off.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for having me. My name is Anjchita Nair. I am the co-founder and CEO of this organization called Culture, Cultre, which often gets confused, but we like to say that you bring the you in culture. But the
Yes.
point is, why we've sort of tried to keep it light and interesting and quirky is because we want more and more people to feel enthusiastic about culture and heritage. And that's our basic goal, to make art, culture, and heritage more and more accessible, more fun, more inviting, and basically increase the pool of heritage enthusiasts. I'm an architect and I also did public policy and management. So I sort of, played dual role when it comes to the projects that we do here at Culture. Shall I share my screen and start the presentation? Yeah.
Please do, yeah.
Please let me know if you can see the screen.
Can do, yeah. Like the little Wordle reference there.
Yes. So, why I sort of chose the Wordle reference, even though it's a bit distorted for my liking, is because this is how we've sort of gone about in our journey. We try something, some things work out partially, some things work out, fully, and then we reuse that learning and then go ahead. And these are the different, sort of domains where we've tried to venture and do our little experiments. So that's what we're going to talk about, venturing into cultural entrepreneurship. So while we're working in the sector, we try to keep abreast with some studies and different, opinions and surveys that people do, which are relevant to us. And we did a little analysis of what were the number of visitors in Louvre, Paris versus National Museum, Delhi. And the numbers are clear, right? It's absolutely abysmal, the difference. And there are actual studies that show Indians are more likely to visit museums when traveling abroad than in India. And this is because museums in India are perceived as boring and non-experiential, and something that is not what they want to do on their free day. There was another study which asked Indians different, very, very simple questions about different aspects of culture and heritage, about performing arts, about folk art, about architecture, food. And most of them got the answers wrong. In fact, 60% of them admitted that they do not know much about Indian history and culture. And this is for a country who takes a lot of pride in their culture and heritage. So we sort of started thinking about why is it that we can't sort of inculcate your appreciation for art, culture, and heritage, in our own people. And when we look at global context, things are changing. STEM, which was science, technology, engineering, and maths, has now become STEAM with integration of arts in it. So STEM is being used to create art, and arts are being used to understand STEM better. And this has to now become part of education in general. And when we look at some more data, we see that India has the largest adolescent population in the world. There's also largest overseas diaspora of Indians. So then when Indian art, culture, and heritage as a sector is right at the cusp of being explored by young Indians in India and all over the world. Some data about edutainment market. So there is a lot of scope in edutainment, but does art, culture, and heritage come into edutainment? And if it doesn't, then what can we do about it? Globally, GLAM, which is galleries, library, archives, and museums, is completely changing. But India, or broadly South Asia, are we sort of taking enough steps to go in that direction? And when we look at creative industry, it is definitely not just designers or just architects. It also includes a gamut of other domains like video games, techies, cultural tourism, experiential design. So the whole idea is that now is the time for people to take up entrepreneurship in this sector, but also think about it in an interdisciplinary manner. And that's what we've tried to do here at Culture. We foresee an exciting revolution for new solutions to widen access to an understanding of art, culture, and heritage. But also, we see a fundamental shift in the perception of cultural and creative industry. We also believe that now with technology, we have many, many opportunities to democratize the experience of interpretation of heritage, which was earlier considered elitist or only for intellectuals. So what we did was in 2019, we brought together a bunch of heritage enthusiasts, but different professionals like historians, architects, archaeologists, researchers, designers, technology experts, and each one of them brings in their own expertise to the domain. So our main aim is basically to promote access, understanding, and experience. But we do this in multiple ways. We do it through content, we do it through products, and we do it through experiences. Uh, I start with this slide because I have been accused of starting this company just to share memes that I make. And we started this in COVID when it was sort of one of the best ways to reach out to more and more audience. But we continue that tradition even today. And, it's something, this also talks about the approach we've taken with respect to our brand voice. We do very, very intense research. We do very academic things, but we also like to have some fun. So 2019, we started. 2020, of course, was the COVID year. So what could we do when we were inside our homes? We decided to launch the Heritage Olympiad. This was India's first Olympiad on art, culture, and heritage, and it covered domains across art, culture, and heritage, around 10 domains. And again, our questions were such that it took a multi-domain approach. So it's not just about rote learning, but it's about understanding different domains of culture. The Heritage Olympiad was quite a success. We had participants not only from India, but from 20 countries outside India. So that was a good validation for us to realize that there is a market out there for us. We also did a lot of talks during COVID. We started doing heritage education programs with universities, with schools. We also developed an app. It was, again, just a pilot to see if we can translate what we did for Heritage Olympiad into a fun gamification of content, which is quizzes or puzzles and so on. And while we were doing these tech-based or digital experiments, we also started something called Culture Box. This was our product line. So we developed some interesting products, starting with the Harappan archaeology kit, which simulates the experience of an archaeologist in your home. So you dig out Harappan artifact replicas, just like an archaeologist would, using the tools an archaeologist would. You note down things like an archaeologist, and we also started giving content in a interesting manner along with this kit. So what happens is you learn about the Harappan civilization, but it's not a boring textbook based learning. Similarly, we extended that to some more concepts like gemstones, punchmark coins, which were the first kind of coins found in the world. And we also started doing online workshops around these concepts. And now we are developing more and more products which are gamification of concepts related to art, culture, and heritage. For example, we've come out with something called art-based rummy cards, where we introduce contemporary Indian artists to people through and their styles, their major artworks through the game of rummy, which everyone is familiar with. So it's just a simple extension of what we already know to what we don't know. Once COVID got over, we started doing experiential programs, starting from a festival in Goa where we talked about rediscovering Goa. Goa in India, usually associated with just parties or beaches. We talked about different museums, performing arts, different culinary experiences, different green experiences that you could have. And we sort of started expanding the base of what we did. So from digital to products to experiences. That's how we started conducting our experiments. We also decided to celebrate different days associated with heritage and museums. So we did a festival around the World Museum Day, where we invited different participants for competitions like creative writing around museums. You did photo contests around museums. We did case studies around museums. We did illustration competitions around museums. So it basically invited more and more people like photographers, illustrators, people who are good at writing to visit museums and then give their own interpretation of the museum experience. We also conducted a lot of walks, which were led by experts. But all of these were to understand how people react to different experiences as well as different call outs, different opportunities related to the sector. We always continue to engage with experts in the domain because, again, access to these experts is something which most people don't have. We started something called Center for Museums, which also facilitates, making museums more fun. So even when you look at our visual language, you will see that what we've tried to do is keep it less museum-esque, as you say, and more fun, for the lack of a better word. But in a more serious tone, we also come out with a publication every year, once a year, where we do a roundup of news and updates from the museum world. So it's called Museum Mosaic. We recently came out with the second edition of it. Initially, it was a digital publication, but there was so much demand for it to be in a print edition that this year we're going to come out with a print edition of both of these 2023 and 2024 publications. Because it's very surprising, but there are no spaces for museum professionals to write in a non-academic setting. Of course, there are journals where people write about it, but how many people get access to those journals? Or how many people are even exposed to those journals? So along with the publication, we constantly do social media outreach, where all the things that we cover in the publication are completely open for anyone and everyone to read. We also started something called Heritage Tidbits, which in the format of a podcast. Again, to try and increase our reach, our base of audience for heritage and culture. And since the last 2 years, we've gotten into projects, focused projects where we do research, curation, and design in the field of art, culture, and heritage. So here we do archival research, we create multimedia content, and my most favorite part is we commission art and as well as craft. So starting from one of the government projects that we did, where we created manuals of how village level craft can be documented, to exhibitions where we look at how India's past and different countries are connected, to looking at very hardcore heritage concepts like manuscripts, and how that can be made more accessible and interesting for a regular audience. This was one of our first forays into exhibition or spatial design, but this led to one of a bigger projects, which was Baghe Bahar, a part of the India Art, Architecture and Design Biennale, which took place in one of the heritage buildings in India called the Red Fort. Here, what we did differently was we invited photographers, we invited artists to donate their work as part of the exhibition. They also created work specifically for the exhibition. Here, we also showcase digital art, we showcase installation art, we had audiovisual experiences, we had sensory experiences where we showcase traditional perfumes of India. We also looked at some physical installations. Um, we asked performers to do their own interpretation of the topic. So, in these projects, what I'm trying to say is we used each project as an avenue to experiment in different domains. So, whether it is multimedia content, whether it is audiovisual content, whether it is immersive experiences, we tried all of them, and then we sort of looked at what works, what doesn't work, and how we could learn from it and to apply it in our next project or our next sort of experiment. And our most recent project, which was the Constitution Museum and Rights and Freedoms Academy inside a university in Sonipat. This was a museum dedicated to the Constitution of India, its making, as well as the 75 years journey that it has taken in the how it has evolved, how people have interpreted it. All these things were to be addressed in this museum. Now, Constitution is a very, very academic and heavy topic. But what we thought was, how do we make it interesting? So, whether it is visual language that we followed, whether it's the format in which we showcased the content, which was heavily research content. So, all of it was done through archival research or through expert interviews. But the presentation of it was in a language which was completely accessible to a lay person who has nothing to do with the constitution in his daily life. And that's the visual that you see here. We also got around 30 artists to do commissioned artwork for the museum. And that also brought in contemporary art into the museum sector. This is, I think, the way forward, where you mix not so museums, from being a repository of just information or artifacts, are now becoming active hubs where there is art, there is discussions, there are community engagements, there are participatory models where not even funding is left out. Even funding is sometimes crowdfunded by people. So the models around museums and heritage is completely changing in recent times. We had a lot of multimedia experiences where we had AI generated, AI based installations where people could interact with archival images. We had a lot of animated content where we explained landmark cases which changed the history of India, but a lot of people don't even know about them. And we presented it in a format of fun animated short videos, which could be just consumed by any person, from child to a scholar or an expert. So we also had a lot of interactive exhibitions within the museum, like digital walls. We had physical interactive walls. We also had an immersive experience, which was inspired by artwork in the Constitution, etc. So starting from when we deal with something like history, there's absolutely very important that we have archival or in-depth research, but when we present it, and the formats in which we present are also very, very important. So this was about the museum. Then we've been doing few interesting projects where we bring out art, craft based artifacts into the world, and we make it more relevant, may make it more interesting for people who have not interacted with craft before. We also try to commission as much of folk art or craft as possible in our projects. That is, we've been in the last 3 years, I think we've had more than 70 partnerships, and that itself is something which I really, really want to stress about, because without partnerships, you don't grow. We, as in the creative industry, we are all basically vying for the attention of a few. But what if we work together to increase the pool of our customers, increase the pool of our audience? Then we don't really have to work against each other. We can work together and make it more interesting for everyone. So just quickly going through some of the emerging opportunities that we see in museum and cultural institutions. From repositories of artifacts or neutral spaces or expert-driven elitist institutions, we have now started seeing museum ecosystem or the heritage ecosystem as a place which has to be inclusive, connected to local histories, institutions that are looking at alternate voices, alternate histories, alternate narratives, and also looking at experiential and participatory formats of presenting content or presenting, any sort of whatever was already there in a new avatar. So when we look at some examples, we have a really interesting museum in Gujarat, which serves as a platform for Adivasi or tribal communities in India. But here, the narrative is entirely from the community. Even the architecture of the space has been inspired by the traditions and heritage of that community. So it's the perspective of the community which has been kept as the center focus, rather than an expert-driven top-down approach. We have new formats like Museum on Wheels, which has been, something that CSMVS in Mumbai has come up with, and they are so popular among schools, among educators. They are covering the entire gamut of country, one day at a time. They keep inviting more and more students to explore the museum inside a bus. What I also wanted to talk about was looking at existing platforms and seeing how you can connect to art, culture, and heritage. So this is one of my favorite examples of how the Vienna Museum actually used OnlyFans as a platform to reach out to more audiences. So because they kept getting censored on Instagram and Facebook, they said, the Vienna Tourism Board actually came up with the idea of let's go on OnlyFans. Gamification and storytelling is something that a lot of entrepreneurs can look at in the heritage space. So they can look at interactive games which are inspired by museum collections, branding and design. Designers can come into the museum space or the cultural spaces and look at how they can make creative industry more inviting or more interesting for people who are not into museums. There are different organizations like Art Fervor or Google Arts and Culture who keep coming up with interesting games to make more and more people online interact with museum collections or pop culture and references to history. We also have fun games which have been designed based on museums. We have games which have been created by based on heritage but connected in a format which we already are familiar with, like Lego. And of course, the tech entrepreneurship space. I think it's time that tech entrepreneurs look at art, culture, and heritage in a more serious way, because every museum, at least in India and South Asia, are looking at how they can use digital platforms or digital tools to make their content more and more interactive. There are holographic content which have AI based conversations, and you can talk to artists or you can talk to historic figures. There are murals where you can understand what the mural is about through QR codes. There are participatory online platforms where you add to a collection or you become an artist yourself. There are also spaces like airports and museums, airports, which do not really connect to museums, but have now become art galleries or museum spaces, because they have space to display art, or they have space where the local history of the area can be showcased. we there are a lot of museums which are taking up very, very important subjects, or very, very painful subjects, and showcasing it in a manner which is graceful, which is dignified, and making people understand what happened in history in a way which is not intimidating or boring, but making people understand the depth of things. For example, earthquakes, genocides, wars. These are topics which are difficult to sort of explain, but a lot of museums are doing it in a way which makes it emotionally engaging for the audience. Last thing that I want to talk about is making museums accessible, and not just museums, but museums and cultural spaces accessible and inclusive. And this starts with looking at each space as an opportunity to increase the number of people who access it. So you have now tactile galleries which can be created. There are apps which are engaging with content in museums, which look at how people with different disabilities can interact with them. We also have museums becoming social platforms where conversations about important issues, different voices are being encouraged in the museum space. So, for example, this is a great example. This online exhibition called Undivided Identities looks at the lives of partition survivors. And they do it through an engaging, visitor-driven format where people select, they have questions and you select what path you want to take, and depending on the path that you take, your outcome is determined. It actually makes you understand how the decisions, that kind of emotional questions that people had to face during partition. And they also included students from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, along with students from Scotland, to create this platform. So different formats of creation, different formats of presentation, all of this is being explored in the creative sector right now. There are museums which are completely online. There are businesses which are looking at museums for interesting collaborations. One of my favorite examples is, of course, Samsung and the Met. The Samsung screens, when they are off, become a screen which showcases beautiful artworks from the Met. And this is a collaboration which I don't think I saw coming, but it works. There was a collaboration between Louvre and Airbnb, and where they did a competition. The winner got to spend a night in a space which Airbnb created inside the Louvre, and they also got to explore Louvre through the night. So there are multiple opportunities for brands which are conventionally not considered part of the creative industry to collaborate with creative industry and get more and more audience as well. Of course, climate consciousness is something that we are all talking about in different capacities, and that it's the same with culture sector. So most of us have not thought about it in the museum and cultural institution space. So people who are experts, people who are entrepreneurs who want to take up sustainability as their core, they have a huge platform for people to come, and huge number of institutions they can create an impact in. This is a good example of that, where design collabs, something called Project Tarasha, brought together designers and craftsmen to create articles which were on sale, but they also took up themes which talked about extinction of species, or they looked at endangered crafts as well as endangered wildlife. So these are crossovers, that's something which we have not come across before, but now and more people are exploring. So I'm hoping young entrepreneurs who are designers, techies, storytellers, educators, entrepreneurs will come together to create an ecosystem which is reimagining the entire uh, experience of art, culture, and heritage. I think I rushed through that a little bit, but I hope I was, I made sense.
Thank you very much, Anjchita. That was very impressive, and thank you very much for doing this important work. I think it's not the common thing that most entrepreneurs speak, but I think you've ventured into an area that is extremely important, that is art, history, and culture. I think there's no future without thinking of your past, right? So your roots are extremely important. In that
Yeah.
sense, I think we should all together kind of thank you for doing this work for the community. I have a couple of questions, but I'll ask the first question, like, how did you actually get into this? I mean, this is not an area that most entrepreneurs would think of. Would love to understand, like, what made you kind of think of a kind of a entrepreneurship journey in culture?
So honestly, I worked with an organization called Sahapedia, which was trying to build an online encyclopedia in art, culture, and heritage. And then, so that sort of helped me understand the sector a little. But I never thought I would become an entrepreneur myself. I went on to do my public policy and management at IIM Bangalore, and my policy memo there was looking at how do we make culture sector, which was heavily dependent on patronage in the past, and even today looked at as something which government should do or people should do out of charity, or as a CSR initiative. How do we make it more sustainable? And my conclusion was that we need cultural entrepreneurs to come forward, whether it is within the government or whether it's outside the government. We need cultural entrepreneurs to take the lead, and that's the only way this is going. We can make sure art, culture, and heritage is a robust sector. And then I went on to do different things, but it didn't really catch my sort of fancy. And then I thought, instead of like talking about cultural entrepreneurship and asking other people to do it, why don't I try it out myself and see if there is any sort of scope in it, or any weight in what I've been saying as the solution. So, but I have been happy. I'm really, every day I come to work and I'm excited about the new projects that we are doing, new solutions we are coming up with, new approaches that we are taking. So, so far, so good.
Thanks, Anchita. I'll ask one more question before we go to questions that are coming through the Q&A channel. The question, it might be a little too early in the discussion, but I'll still ask. One of the conversations, I guess, for a founder is around monetization, right? Like, how would I make money from a business, from my startup? I guess that would have been one of your concerns, like how would I kind of pay my staff? How would I run the operation? And
Yeah.
what's like the business model here for you? Is it like partnerships driven? Is it like funded by sponsorships, or do you kind of sell a certain service so that you can kind of make money? If you can maybe talk a bit about the business
Sure.
model or multiple models that you use, it might help the audience, because we get a lot of freelancers and founders or people who want to be founders as well. So maybe that might help them as well, if you can kind of share some of the kind of avenues of making money in a culture business.
So, I see it as any other service sector, to be honest. So, if we are providing a service to a particular client, which is creating a museum for them or doing an exhibition for them or creating a design for them, then we of course charge our fee as designers, as researchers, as coordinators, as project managers. But we also have other streams like products. So while the products are at the moment quite less, because we have actually not been able to focus on marketing the product and creating a stream of new products that keep getting launched. But there is a lot of interest in the product. Like we do zero marketing and we still have sales happening on a regular basis on Amazon. So even though it's a small portion, that is a possibility which we haven't explored that much yet. And of course, content monetization is also something that some organizations do. We haven't explored it yet because we don't have that much of a base so far. But I see it as a big sort of revenue stream where content, because the content that is available, that is already there, you can just curate it, present it in a way which is interesting, which is more, which is new and exciting for people, and that could be a revenue stream. So uh, content, products, experiences, I think that's our three verticals. That's what we try to do. So even when we see it, we create an exhibition or a museum, we see it as creating an experience. So it's just basically these three verticals that we are looking at.
Thank you, Anjchita.
Yeah.
Maybe Jamie, we can go to Q&A. Yeah.
Thanks, Anjchita. That was awesome. I think what sort of jumped out for me as well was just, how creative you've been, and also referencing others in the space who've been creative as well, who've been daring as well. I think because some of those things are not necessarily the norm in that sense, like you kind of fall into those kind of corporate norms within a box and you can't necessarily feel like you can break out of it. So I think that was really cool to see those examples, because I think it gives confidence to other people that they can do a different path, a different approach, be a bit creative, be a bit funny. So I really like that. And that's kind of a nice segue into the question that we had a little earlier, which was saying around the memes. They said that there's something that they want to use maybe in their business, and seems to have been successful for you. And they get a bit of hesitation internally. So how would you overcome that? I guess it's probably easier if it's your own business, but still, like maybe if a staff member of yours approached you and said,
No,
I want to start doing
honestly,
these.
in fact, that is something that I've been telling my communications head as well, that let us not use templates. Let us not use anything that has worked for someone else. Let us do our own thing. Let us experiment, fail, doesn't matter. We move on, try something else. So and unless we try it, how do we know it works or not, right? So, and honestly, the fallout of it is not much. People have very short memory on the internet. Nobody cares if you did a flop post. So but something else might go viral. And
Yeah.
in my case, half the time I don't understand the things people do on the social media, which my team does, but I go along with it because I think they know better. And sometimes I have my own ideas which get shot down. But the point is, social media, communications, memes, these are places where you can experiment, where there is not much what do you call investment, so to say. In my building, when I'm creating a museum, I mean, I have to be a little more careful, but social media, not so much. So let us like experiment and try to find our own version of what works. So yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess going to where the people are in that sense with the message that would
Yeah.
most resonate with them as well, which is cool. So yeah, I think we should be trying that ourselves. Yes, that's maybe we'll make a note on doing that. We've already got a lot of questions coming in, so I'll try and sort of whiz through them because I'm mindful of time as well. So the second question was, seems like Culture's been doing a lot of exciting things. How big is the team, and what kind of business support do you get for your initiatives? So I saw the partnerships, I guess, like, is there maybe like government initiatives, things like that maybe you work with as well?
Yeah, so when we started, it was just two of us. And at that time, we did apply for government startup grants. And we did get some support for developing the products, for developing the pilot of the app. So minimal, sort of support, but everything helps. So in the beginning, that was what was the main thing. Then we grew to be a bigger sort of organization. We have around 10 core members right now. But as and when the projects come in, we hire more and more experts. So those are so that we work with a lot of freelancers. So whether it's designers, whether it's researchers, whether it is communications experts, whether it is writing experts, we artists, illustrators, we on the basis of the project, we hire them. So we have grown in a project to maybe a 40-member team also. Worked with organization who hired 60 people for that project. So for the last museum, I think at least 600 to 700 people worked on that one project.
Wow.
But as a team, we think about hiring experts for everything. So we don't want to do everything ourselves. We haven't solved every problem, but there are people who have. So reaching out to good collaborators, I think that's what we have sort of tried to do. It takes time. You fail sometimes. There are multiple. You have to keep trying. You have to keep uh, because everyone has a working style, everyone has a aesthetic, everyone has their own likings, and to match that, it's very important. So we are still in the process of discovering but we have found some great collaborators in the process. So that's what we've been doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really impressive with such a pretty lean team in that sense. So yeah, congrats on that, and hopefully you can keep getting, building in an organic way, I think a manageable way, which is also
Yeah.
great. Um, I'm mindful I don't want to hog any time, so there's a lot of really good questions. So here we go, we'll keep firing them in. So the next question says, a little bit of a preface. It says, although culturally super rich, India seems to slack in awareness and a readiness to invest in well-designed and thought-out museums. Do you think that there's a lack of interest or design understanding / awareness from the government? And then the second question says, also, how do we create this immersion in education where interest usually kind of fizzles out due to boring textbooks, storytelling, things like that? So maybe the old way versus the new way.
Honestly, there has been a lot of interest in the Indian government to, make existing museums better and build more and more experiential museums. I think recently I saw something called has opened up in Vadnagar in Gujarat, which has some 6,000 archaeological objects, but there are experiences, there are immersive experiences, there are simulated experiences, there are illustration-based, spaces. So I think now is the time if anyone wants to really come into this space, because all the governments, whether it's state governments or the central government, they're all looking for good people who will work in the sector, who bring in their own expertise, their own skills to contribute to the sector. So it's not just museologists, art historians anymore who are sort of contributing. There are a lot of opportunities. Sometimes it's because they can't find good experts that they end up not doing a great job. So opportunities are there. You just have to sort of sit down and look for it. And with respect to education, heritage education is very, very close to my heart. Whether it's school or college, I think there are different ways in which you can approach it. But I feel like unless schools open up and collaborate with different institutions and also rethink their own model of how they are sort of exposing their students to the information that the students are supposed to learn, and also from the other side, the museums and cultural institutions to be open to sort of creating tailor-made experiences for students, for younger audiences, for neurodivergent audiences. I think it has to work both ways. So there has to be reception from the school systems, universities, and also from the cultural institutions. So opportunities on both sides.
I love that, yeah. And I think the other thing maybe that gets underlooked as well is that I think you can develop a sense of patriotism as well, because you see more of your history, the things to be proud of, all the great things that people have done over the years.
Yeah,
that you
and
may have been
relevant things to
unaware
be
of.
relevant things to be proud of, not things that you
Yeah.
hear about or you see on WhatsApp
Yeah.
or Instagram. So you actually get
Or
facts that you can be proud of.
or sometimes the kind of the history that sort of paints over certain moments in that sense, or adds weight to maybe other nations in that sense of things that they've done, and when actually the reality was it was in other places. Like I think
Exactly.
the Arabic world, for example, doesn't get enough credit for all the numeracy and things like that they developed. For example, kind of gets attributed to others. So yeah, I love that as well. Okay, more questions as well. There was another one in the chat, and I will touch on that one. I'm going in order at the moment. So we have one from Sonali here, and it says, "How do you make arts, culture, and heritage a sector that pays at par with other sectors?" So kind of touches on a little bit of what Yasser had asked earlier, and thus attract more young, talented minds, because from their opinion, they say the gaps in pay are still quite significant.
Um,
Maybe you know the
That's a
ones on
good
that.
question because, it is something that we also struggle with. We try our best to, compete with with organizations which are at par with us, maybe smaller organization, but there's no way we can compete with corporates. So, there's absolutely no way. But what I want to say is that some sectors give reward later. So, for example, as a doctor, maybe you don't earn as much as an intern, but then when you do become an expert, you do earn much better. As an architect, I know that my internships were paid. Some, any payment was considered lucky when I was young, but I know that architects make a lot of money once they become experts and once their work is appreciated. So maybe in the beginning you do require a sense of passion or interest to drive you, but eventually it does sort of work out, or so I think. So you know because there are opportunities, there is money. It's just that we have not been able to tap into that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it starts with that passion, and then you get the advocacy, you get the support from the partners, and that all
Yeah.
becomes quite lucrative. So
Yeah.
yeah, great. I'm jumping to the question that was in the chat just because time wise, that was the next one in that sense. So that was from Tejshvi, who said, "Could you shed a bit of light on the financial sustainability over the years?" So I guess like how the business is able to continue. You mentioned the government
I
grants
think
early
I
on, but
answered that earlier with the Yas's question.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure,
Yeah.
no problem. And also there was another question in the chat which said about sharing the slides later. So that one I would leave up to you, Anjchita, if you want to share that or not. But there will be a recording of this session. It's being
Yeah.
recorded now, and that will be on our YouTube channel as well, which we'll probably put on tomorrow morning. If we can get it up this evening, then we will. But it will definitely be up by tomorrow morning, and we can share the link with everyone who's attending. So you'll always have that at least. But yeah, I'll leave it to Anjchita whether you want to share the
We can
slides or
share.
anything
We
like
can
that as
share
well.
it. I mean, there's nothing which is not
Sure.
available
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
online.
No
So
problem.
it's sure.
Awesome. Cool.
Mhm.
Okay. So the last few questions that are in the kind of Q&A bit. So this one is from Asanti, who says, reflecting your experience with culture, do you think culturepreneurship is a lucrative business? Did you attract enough customers to fund the business? I think some of these have been slightly answered. So maybe if there's a different
So
spin to
I
it.
will say one thing. It is difficult for investors, whether it's VCs, angel investors, to sort of understand what we are doing and see it as a
Mm,
regular business, because we don't have a 10x ROI within 5 years and all of that. And
yeah.
we trust me, we tried getting investment and I've attended summits, done competitions, I've written to everyone. But what I realized is, just like there needs to be schooling for school ecosystem and cultural institutions, there needs to be schooling for VCs and angel investors and invest people, even CSR funders, because sometimes people don't realize the impact that investing in culture, art, culture, and heritage has in other sectors. There are actual studies that say that if you work in, take culture into consideration in your CSR projects, you are likely to have higher impact, whether it's respect to health, whether it's respect to education, whether it's respect to any of the, regular social factors that you measure impact in. So UNESCO has come out with a study talking about how culture affects many of the SDGs. So we don't get enough avenues to talk about it. But interestingly, there are some organizations now who are looking at cultural entrepreneurships and bringing investors who understand that this requires a different approach. This requires more patience. This requires more experimentation. You cannot have the same approach that you have with a tech entrepreneur with a cultural entrepreneur. It doesn't work like that. So you know I mean, yeah, you need to work at an ecosystem level. The startup ecosystem in general needs to understand cultural entrepreneurship a little better. I will give, the person who asked this question kudos for, bringing it up. But I think more and more avenues like this where we get to talk about it is what we need. So definitely, this helps. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you just described as well is a challenge. It feels a little bit like that some of the VC ecosystem is very much like you've got to fit in a very specific package, and if you don't, then it's almost disregarded when actually there are so many opportunities out
But
there.
what's really funny to me is that even the most funded startups are failing. The ones which projected, who were supposed to be unicorns are not really delivering. That sort of, it's set, that template is set, and people do not see beyond it. And I think it's time to sort of change that as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you're right. Great. Okay, so we've got a couple more questions here. So Evelina, good to see you again. I know you were on the session yesterday as well. So she says, how can we further nourish our creativity level? Sometimes it's like there's so much in our minds and it gets kind of stuck. Any chance you could share scenarios, tools, tricks, or experiences?
I think for me, the team being interdisciplinary is a huge thing. So, what is very exciting what I see in my office is that researchers and designers work together, and it's not like researchers do the design and give it to do the research and give it to the designers. They design it and give it back. It doesn't work like that. They sit together. The researchers talk about what is the hierarchy of information, what is important, what is not important. The designers show them how their own process of why they are doing what they are doing. They completely give such a hard time to the researchers that we don't need this much information. So I think that part of sort of bringing different disciplines together is something which keeps the creativity level changing. And young people, we need more and more young people to join teams, and we need to take them seriously. I think my team is super young. I'm probably the oldest in my team, and my head designer is probably 26. So I really
Quite young.
believe that it's important to take young people and their ideas seriously, because their way of thinking is different, their exposure is different, the world they have navigated is different. So I think that's what you need to do. You need to involve more people, talk about your ideas to more people, get feedback. That's what makes you less stagnant.
I love that. I think hopefully that answers your question, Evelina. And thanks also, just a shout out as well, Santi, your comments as well. So they mentioned and said it was exactly their experience that you just mentioned around investors and the need to educate them and markets about the impact of culture as well. So they appreciate that as well. And Anusha, we'll get to your question in just a moment as well, because we just got a couple more in the line, and then we'll get there. A couple of these are quite short ones at least. So the next question from the mononym Z says, what's your usual approach when reaching out to organizations for potential projects and collaborations? I guess I'm also quite curious here about this, because 70 partnerships plus is very impressive as well. So how do you do that usually?
To be honest, we have been very lucky in terms of people reach out to us for a lot of things, but when we reach out to people, they don't shoot us down. They at least give us one meeting or one call, where then we talk about how we can help them rather than how I mean, for example, Airbnb. Now they have nothing to lose by collaborating with us.
Mm.
So we do all the work for them, and they also get to do an interesting fun project. So you really have to, when you think about collaborations, you can't just think about what you're gaining out of it, but you really have to think about what they are gaining out of it. Why should they lend their brand and credibility to sort of your startup? So forever we're thinking of which brand and how. For example, paint brands, right? Now it's a very very easy sort of extension for to connect paint brands to street art. Now, but a lot of people don't do that, right? But this organization called ST Plus Art has done it. There is, I think, some alcohol brand which looked at folk art inspired bottles for their alcohol bottles. Now, these are collaborations that they are not going to think of. You have to think of how you can bring
Mm.
interesting new things which is beneficial to them as well. So I think it's more about thinking about what makes sense to them than what makes sense to you. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that win-win for sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. Nice. Okay, so very quick, maybe yes or no on this one. It says, "Are you hiring? They would love to be part of the journey." I don't know who this
Yeah.
anonymous person is, but maybe they
Yeah,
can reach
yeah,
out
we're
to you
always
separately after.
hiring, at least, interns. We have a lot of interns come in, but also for projects on the based on projects. So you could just write to us on info@culture.in, culture, CULTRE. So yeah, please
Fantastic.
send in your CVs.
Okay, so the question, and then a question from Sonali. We get a couple in here today. So it says, what are your biggest challenges of being an entrepreneur in the sector?"
I think the biggest challenge initially at least, was convincing people that this is a sector to be an entrepreneur in. Like people would be like, "Is this an NGO? Do you, work with the government?" And we were like, "No, we're a for-profit startup," And to sort of double down on that and keep saying that, and also demand money where we put in our work, because a lot of times uh, people with these projects, a lot of times people think for startups it's an opportunity, right? But if
Mm.
you're going to spend your time, expertise, skills on something, you always have to sort of get compensated for it, even if it is minimal. So that's something that I would like to say to freelancers, and uh, no matter how big the opportunity is, at least you must be compensated. So that is something that we always sort of try to do. Sometimes you of course do put in some effort for business development, that is part of the journey. But yeah, but we do not hesitate in saying we are for profit, and it's, of course, it's passion, of course it's interest that drives us, but we also need to make it sustainable. So yeah.
Yeah. There's a nice reference back to a session we had last week as well with another founder talking about protecting your value as well, being confident and standing on what you have to offer as well. So I think it's great to hear that again. I think that shift will take a lot of voices to say, and then I think people will start to be more respectful and connect with that as well. So that was all in the Q&A, but there is one more question from
Sure.
Anusha as well that we just wanted to touch on. So they said that they're an art and cultural heritage lawyer, and they recently set up their own practice, and so they can relate to the entrepreneurial perspectives that you mentioned. They said, "What is the best way to reach out to propose a collaboration? Any advice on the best way to find diverse clients?" So a little bit similar to some of the bits I guess
Similar to
before
what
that.
I had already talked
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, see collaborations where you don't see any, I guess.
yeah,
Even possibilities, there's always a possibility of a collaboration. So it's just that you need to have these conversations. You need to keep on meeting people, discussing your ideas, discussing their ideas. So you never know what sort of comes out of it. So
Are
yeah.
there any channels in particular? Is it like LinkedIn, emailing people, calling people, just going to see
Uh,
them? Like what do you find tends to work in this industry?
Honestly, for us, Instagram has worked a lot.
Okay.
Even with respect to reaching out to big artists, who are very well known in the art world, or photographers, or tech
Mm,
experts. We've used Instagram quite extensively, and we shamelessly DM people and tell them that,
yeah, why
we
not?
need help. Please come work with us, or work, in collaboration with us. And more often than not, if they have the time, then they do sort of agree, because again, these are interesting subjects, to say the least.
Hmm.
So people also get bored of the regular things that they keep doing. So sometimes, if they have the time, they do sort of say, okay, let's try it. So try all channels, more, whether it's LinkedIn, email, Instagram, WhatsApp, I don't know, ask somebody if they know somebody, so I think
Yeah.
be shameless, I guess.
Yeah, fearless, I think is
Okay,
another way to describe it,
fearless.
right?
Let's be
Just
fearless.
you got to go for it, right?
Yeah,
Well, the two worst outcomes: one, you don't hear anything, or one,
yeah,
they say no, right?
yeah,
That's the worst of the be.
yeah.
So
And you're already there. So, anything is
yeah,
better than where you are. So, yeah.
yeah, love
Hmm.
that. Okay, so I thought I would just give a shout out also so people can find you as well. So I'm just going to share the screen again.
Yeah.
So for those who aren't currently connected to Anjchita, this is her profile. So do send out a note to her if you want to continue the conversation. Of course, obviously, you can check out Culture as well. Looks like they're doing some fantastic work. As mentioned, the recording will be available as of tomorrow, and we're really excited to see new faces in here, and hopefully, we'll continue to see you. Anjita just shared her email address in the chat as well, so note that down as well if you'd like to continue that conversation as well, which would be great. And then one last thing I just want to mention, because I know we've gone over a couple of minutes. For those who are new, I suppose, to Do a Circle in that sense, I mentioned at the beginning of the call that we're really trying to make a strong effort into supporting independent doers in India as well, which is a big reason why we have these events on a Thursday. And so for those who maybe aren't yet in the ecosystem, if you would like to register some interest, then you can go on to doacircle.com/waitlist, and you'll see here we have the waitlist for our brand new India focused page, which is going to be launching next week actually. So you'll already get a little bit of information about what's to come, and we'd also love your feedback on how much more we could put in there as well, resources, events such as this, potentially solutions and things like that as well. So really excited to keep that developing for you. Great. Yes, let's see you want to do more.
Thank you very much, Anjchita. I think it's an excellent presentation, excellent sharing, and very different from the usual kind of entrepreneurship related presentations and talks that we organize, as well as that you hear in the ecosystem. So thank you very much for bringing something different, inspiring, and very interesting as well. And as I said at the beginning, I think it's very important work, and very few dare to do this. So thank you so much.
And thank you so much for having me and for supporting cultural entrepreneurship. So, yes.
Take care, everyone. Have a
Thank
great rest
you.
of the day.
Bye-bye.